But let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Amaza, and I'm the Senior Communications Officer at YAGA Africa. We are a civil society organization based out of Nigeria, where we work to strengthen democratic participation and civic engagement in Nigeria and across Africa, and is in line with our vision of a developed and democratic Africa where the people are engaged. To kick us off, I'll invite John Frinjua to give your welcome remarks and to introduce the panelists. John currently serves as the Program Officer for Policy Influencing and Advocacy at the West African Civil Society Institute, where his work focuses
Pour
on
l'influence des politiques et le plaidoyer à l'Institut de la société civile d'Afrique de l'Ouest. Son travail consiste à donner aux acteurs locaux les moyens d'influencer les décisions clés en matière de gouvernance et de développement, en particulier dans les domaines de la démocratie, du champ, de la gouvernance, des ressources naturelles, de la sécurité et de la résolution des conflits. Donc, il joue un rôle. Donc, il est un ancien élève de l'Université du Ghana et de Fletcher School de law and diplomatie de l'Université Tufts à Boston, dans le Massachusetts. Alors, John, tu peux prendre la parole.
Our distinguished panelists, but also good morning to our colleagues and friends from across the region. I see colleagues, all faces. I see Alfia, I see Comrade Maudi, and I see also Paul, and also so many familiar faces from across the region. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. On behalf of our Executive Director, who would have wished to be here, Miss Nana Fajino, and also our Head of Policy Influence and Advocacy Unit, Omolara Balogun. I bring you greetings from the Institute and to welcome you to this very important West Africa Policy Dialogue series, WACPODIS. WACPODIS is our dialogue, our flagship dialogue platform, which other civil society organizations from across the region own. It's not just a WACSI platform, it's a platform that all civil society organizations across the region can engage on critical issues that border civil society across the region. Today's team, WACPODIS team, is on youth participation in democratic processes in West Africa. Why? Why this important team at this critical juncture? We all know that the youth in our region constitute the majority. About 60% of our population is young. And we also understand that despite the demographic strength that we have as young people, there are so many critical spaces that we don't even have the opportunity to bring to bear our experiences, especially around political participation, around inclusive development, around policy influencing, and all that. That is critical to ensuring that we have a strong democratic system in our various countries. So looking at the region, we've had a number of really important elections across the region. And Ghana is one of the countries in the region that is currently slated for one of the important general elections, both presidential and parliamentary. And Ghana's elections is just about 10 days away. We also have elections in other countries in West Africa that we know of. Some of them are parliamentary. There are some presidential elections slated for sometime next year. And it's important that we begin to highlight the importance of the role of the youth in all these elections, how they are going to contribute, how their expertise are supposed to be brought in terms of holding on to political positions, but also sharing their experiences on how the direction of their countries should go. So this webinar, we believe that would provide the valuable opportunity for us to engage in deep reflections on the obstacles that hinder youth participation, and also to propose some remedial concrete solutions to strengthen their involvement in the electoral processes. Critical to this discussion would also be the vital role of civil society organizations in amplifying the voices of young people, and also creating the spaces for young people to be able to participate and participate effectively. So I therefore invite all of you to participate in these important discussions, share your experiences, your recommendations, and also we hope that this webinar would come up with concrete proposals that would enhance youth mobilization in upcoming elections in Ghana, in other parliamentary elections and presidential elections that are coming up early next year across the region. We have a fantastic list of panelists here, very experienced, and I'm sure they would be sharing deep reflections for us to leave this webinar with. So thank you so much for your presence. Thank you so much for joining us from across the region. And I wish you a fruitful and constructive engagement. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, John, for the very beautiful welcome remarks and setting the context for this conversation. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have 4 panelists that will be discussing. Let me introduce our panelists who will be doing justice to the topic on youth democratic participation, youth participation in democratic process in West Africa. So as we all know, this year has been, 2024 has been described as the year of elections, with about half the people in the world going to elections or voting, or half the population of the world in countries where their elections are taking place. And in Africa as well, you have 17 African nations that have conducted elections or are conducting elections, because the year is not over. We still have a few elections before the year runs out. For example, we have Ghana next month, or actually next week, less than 2 weeks' time. So this provides, this makes this conversation around how young people are participating in these elections in Africa and West Africa very, very important, considering how it's a young region and continent. But let me introduce the panelists. So we have our 4 panelists for today. We have Althea Faith Kemokai, who is a program manager at 𝐏𝐚𝐫 Partners for Democratic Development in Liberia. She is a passionate advocate for youth development and good governance with over 7 years of experience. And at 𝐏𝐚𝐫, she, as a program manager for 𝐏𝐚𝐫 Partners for Democratic Development, she leads the Young Political Leadership School Africa, which impacted over 1,000 young leaders across 11 African countries. Althea is a skilled orator representing youth at major events and was named USAID's Liberia Development Youth of the Year for 2023 and 2024. For 2023 to 2024. She also serves on Liberia's UN Youth Advisory Panel and as a youth advisor to the president. Althea is also a student at the Gabriel L. Dennis Foreign Service Institute and convenes the Youth Development Dialogue. Hi, Althea. I hope you're here in the room. All right. Then next we have, all right, Joseph Kwadwo Afari-Yeboah from Ghana. He is a member of the Convention's People's Party and a parliamentary candidate for the Okere constituency. Joseph Kwadwo Afari-Yeboah, he has over 20 years of experience in civil service, development consulting, and project management, and has held key positions within the CPP, including serving as the regional secretary for Greater Accra. Joseph is currently the executive director of the Kwame Center for Ideology, Governance, and Leadership, where he leads initiatives focused on governance and leadership development. He's an alumnus of the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, and is also an active member of the Ghana National Chamber for Commerce and Industry and the Project Management Institute in Ghana. His work has earned him a strong reputation for promoting democratic ideals, good governance, and political leadership. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you very much, my brother.
And next we have Paul 𝐾𝐨𝐻𝐴𝐚𝐫𝐭 from Togo. He is the head of the Tamberna Institute for Governance, a think tank in Lomé, with over 19 years of experience in international development. He's recognized for expertise in democratic governance, capacity building, and managing complex projects. As a former resident director of the National Democratic Institute in Guinea, Central African Republic, and Gabon, he has coordinated programs on social cohesion, electoral transparency, and citizen participation. His work emphasizes the inclusion of youth and women in political decision-making. Through ITG, Paul leads studies to improve inclusive governance and political transparency, and he strongly believes in the importance of active citizen participation for building stable societies. Welcome, Paul. Hello, Paul, are you in the room?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Je suis là. Merci.
All right, welcome. And then last but not the least,
thank you so much.
From Nigeria, who's the General Secretary of the Alliance for Credible Elections, ACE Nigeria. She's a seasoned feminist activist with over 31 years of experience in governance, elections, and women's empowerment. She has led initiatives to increase women's political participation, notably supporting the election of women to local government offices in Nigeria. As a national project coordinator for the Women in Nigeria project, she empowered rural women politically and economically. Odi has held leadership roles at organizations like GADA and Baobab for Women's Human Rights, and currently serves as the General Secretary of the Alliance for Credible Elections. Her work focuses on promoting gender-sensitive governance and strengthening electoral processes. Welcome, Ma.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's get started with the conversation. And I'll start by taking my questions in the reverse order from which we introduced our panelists. So I'll start with Ma. With you have over 3 decades of experience working in the democratic space and elections and governance. So let me start with asking you, in your opinion, do you think young people fully identify with current democratic system that's across West Africa? Do they feel like their needs are being genuinely considered and addressed by democratic institutions? And then importantly, do you think they believe they can change their countries through the ballot box in the current democratic setup?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me, as I say. I just want to state that in the beginning, West Africa had not always been this bad. The forerunners like Azikiwe, Nkrumah, and all that, and Kawuda in Nairobi, all of them were young people, and they made their mark. And at a point, the rain started falling, and the old that came, some people that came hijacked the process after the military interventions, and took us back, and we ended up with underdevelopment that has marginalized not only the youths, the women and persons with disability, and even poor people. And the women are also found among the youths. So to the point now that the youths seems to have given up hope. And we saw example of what the youth can do by coming back. The youth, for example, I want you just to use the example of Nigeria. In year 2020, we used to bother what will happen when our generation goes. What happens in Nigeria, for example. But in year 2020, there was a great awakening. The youths came out together because actually the fate of West Africa lies in the hands of the youths. Because things have gotten so bad that we are regarded as a byword. It's where things cannot work. But our strength and hope and confidence is in the youths. And because they have the energy, they have the capability, they have the capacity to turn things around. And when there was a great awakening from year 2020, starting from year 2016, 18 across West Africa, and culminating in year 2020 in Nigeria, we saw that actually the youth turned their anger towards mobilization and picking an issue and saying, enough is enough. And many of them died. And even when many of them died, and when they saw a figure they can identify with that can change things, in year 2022 and 23 in Nigeria, they mobilized again. I came back again. And the story was different. And two Saturdays ago, I saw a very bad incident in Ondo of second governorship election. The youth constitutes 35.41% of the electorate in that Ondo, and they were playing football on the day of the election. They refused to come, which means what happened in year 2023 in Nigeria, where they thought their vote do not count, has affected them. But there is also reason why we must hope again, because our fate also lies in the hands of the youths. And we saw also in Nigeria, in August, from 1st to 10th, the youth also mobilized again and saying we need good governance, despite the fact that they were betrayed and disappointed in the 2023 general election. And we can also see the youth mobilization going on in Senegal, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in Ghana. And there are so many mobilizations going on in Ghana towards the election that will hold less than 2 weeks' time in Ghana. So I think what we need actually is to coordinate our efforts and our anger. And also because when we speak, the people that are holding us down will listen to us, especially when the youths are speaking. They know the youth has the capacity and to turn things around. And if we do not harness our potentials, our energies and anger to ensure that we have elections that reflect the aspirations and votes of the people, and because our West African region will be doomed. And we can do it. We've done it in the past. As a student union activist, we fought the military. In the streets, they will be shooting and will be throwing stones. But when it got so bad, they have to go because we were consistent. The youth cannot come out and go back, or japa, as they call it in Nigeria. They have to be consistent because war is not won in a day. War is won when you are consistent and mobilizing and changing strategies and also responding to challenges as they come. That is when the war is won. It's not a one-off issue. It's a long-term project. And the youth have to realize that we have to come together across West Africa and sharing experiences and strategies and take our region and our countries back. Because if we continue this way, in 50 years' time, all these countries will go down. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your very submissions. You made some really interesting points, but and some of them, I'll come back to them later because it already leads up to the questions I have later for you. But let me ask Paul 𝐾𝐸𝐽𝐜𝐿, based on your experience in working in expanding democratic governance, citizen participation. In your opinion, to what extent do you think young people in West Africa are being engaged, whether as voters or candidates? And then also, are electoral commissions effective in involving young people and engaging them adequately in electoral processes?
OK, merci beaucoup. Ce sont des questions pertinentes par rapport à l'implication des jeunes et surtout à la représentativité des commissions
in the sub-region by the electoral commissions. But before I specifically address this question, it is important to underscore a number of crises that the young West African youth are faced with. And due to these crises, they are not allowed or they are not able to actively participate in democratic processes and in elections in the sub-region. The first crisis is the political identity crisis. We have realized that most young people of less than 35 years were not born during the days of the democratic movement in the 1980s, 90s. They are people who are not aware of what uh, happened during the democratic processes in those days, the 1980s and 90s. So today, what are the stakes? Through the commitment of young people and through civic engagement and their contributions to young people, we have realized more than ever that young people uh, often support populists, especially in the Francophone countries where we saw coup d'etat in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and even in Guinea, where we realized that the young people are more likely to support the populist movements rather than, or the populist movements such as the military leaders that orchestrated the coup d'etat. There is also there seems to be some form of accommodation of civil dictatorship, which is once again seen more in the Francophone countries. So due to this political identity crisis, young people are not able to understand democratic values and practices, not to talk of contributing to them sustainably to the progress of this democracy in the sub-region. The second category, the second type of crisis is the representativeness crisis. And there again, we realize that there are a number of obstacles that prevent young people from finding themselves within the political system that have been set up in the sub-region. First of all, we have the ethnic and religious divides. Young people seem to have a poor understanding of the notion or the concept of a secular state. And in most cases, this religious cleavage and ethnic divides, regional divides, come to undermine the approach and understanding that young people should have on democratic processes, and therefore they are not motivated to join. There's also the linguistic obstacle. In most cases, you would realize that political debate is mostly among elites who speak the official language. So if it's an Anglophone country, English, and if it's in Francophone countries, French. And these are languages that may not be fully understood the by most of the young people. And so there seems to be a gap between the elites and the masses when it comes to political issues. And we see this not only in the political parties, but also with trade unions and associations. There's also the gender barrier. My predecessor touched on it a bit. And we realize that even till now, the representation of women is still problematic. Women leaders finding it difficult to guide young ladies to follow in their footsteps and to be politically more involved. And due to this, most of the women and young women population remain marginalized. Finally, there's also the political ideology crisis, which prevents a better representation. And for that matter, young people do not find themselves in such political spaces. The final crisis is the crisis regarding sovereignty, the understanding of sovereignty. Young people do not value sometimes the weight of sovereignty during elections. Young people do not know that their voices count a lot and their votes count, irrespective of their intellectual capacity, financial capacity, their social status. They are not aware that their votes are powerful and are capable of causing political change. Sometimes they only take part just to get some financial favors. Their interests are limited to the financial favors they can get during these periods and not to actively participate and cause any form of impact. And that is why they are liable to be convinced. Sometimes they are easily corruptible. Once you give them some gifts, they are willing to sell their sovereignty and their integrity. And due to all these problems, people raise questions about the participation of young people. So these crises, if not resolved, the young people in the sub-region would find it difficult to find a political identity which is in line with democratic values and standards, and it will be difficult for them to gain representation, be it at the association levels or at the political levels, and they would continue to sell their voices, their votes, and their sovereignty in exchange for gifts or cash. Regarding electoral evolution, some countries have made strides in having independent and technical electoral commissions, mostly in Anglophone countries such as Ghana and Nigeria. But in most Francophone countries, there is a mixed system where civil society, political leaders, and even public administration members are part of the electoral commission. Sometimes some administrative aspects or operations are handled by the state, like in Senegal and in Mali, with the support of civil society and political parties. And in such a system, the Electoral Commission is less technical, is less independent, and continues to be influenced by political parties and civil society actors. And therefore, it is important to encourage the participation of the youth and to assure them of the transparency of political processes so that, and we should also work towards having technical and independent electoral commissions where people who are appointed to these posts will be appointed based on their merit and not their political affiliations. I would like to stop here because I've been accorded just 10 minutes, and I will later talk about some solutions that could help us resolve these crises that the youth are faced with, and how they can participate even more relevantly. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, merci beaucoup, for giving us your take on this. One thing that stood out for me was when you said that young people do not know their voices count and they have power, so they have reduced themselves to only collecting for financial favor during elections. But we'll come back to all of these points later. So let me go to Alfia. I see you're ready. So it's just a question I had asked earlier. To what extent do you think young people are currently represented in national and local parliaments, and to what degree do their voices carry weight? Do you think that they are influential? So I'll have to start So we have just about 10 minutes for this submission, so we have to manage time properly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I am, thankful to WACSI and happy to represent my boss, Eddie, who should have been on this dialogue. I'm going to try my best to work within time. So just to state the foundation before stating my point on your question. To start from my country, Liberia has a history that is marked by civil wars and political instability. So, they struggle for democratic governance. Many young people in their late 20s right now in Liberia, their childhood was marked by this malicious act. So pretty much our democracy means, just balancing hope for progress for us. So we have a youthful population, and many of the problems that we have in Africa are not so far-fetched. We can all relate to them. So I just wanted to lay this foundation. We have over 70% of our population below the age of 35. So, and young people are generally underrepresented in both national and local parliaments. Although there have been some improvements, the percentage of young legislators remain low compared to the overall demographic significance. Looking at over 70%, and you have just about 8 persons or 8 young people in the House of Representatives below the age of 35. I mean, that is just a drop in the ocean. But there has been discussions around implementing youth quotas in political parties and electoral processes. These discussions, they have emerged, aiming to increase the number of young representatives. But however, these initiatives have yet to fully institutionalize. And speaking about the influence and the weight of young voices, there is struggle for recognition. While there are some young parliamentarians, I was just reading about last week about Botswana that appointed a 26-year-old Minister of Youth, and of course their mining minister also 37, the Minister of Health 37. That is very encouraging. But just looking at some young parliamentarians, their influence can be limited by several factors. Including the lack of political experience, inadequate support system, and, just this entrenched nature of older political elites that exist currently. I just an example from the Liberia context, we have a representative for who is 26 years old, and sometimes I have to ask, where is this girl? Like, what is she actually doing? Because she's relatively quiet, and that can relate to a lot of that, the experience and everything. So young representatives, they often act, if once they are given the opportunity, they act as advocate for youth-related issues such as education, employment, healthcare. Their effectiveness in championing these causes can vary depending on their political alliance and the existing political climate as well. So there are so many factors that are affecting the influence of young people, but just the political landscape in Liberia is often dominated by established political figures, parties. They make it challenging for younger leaders to gain traction and influence in policy effectively. So, and also something to look at is just the grassroots movement. Young people often find strength in grassroots movement across Africa, not just Liberia. Civil society organizations where they can mobilize and support and push for change outside of the traditional political structures. And this can enhance the influence directly and indirectly as well. Even in their formal representation, even if their formal representation is limited, this is something that is crucial and is also important. So just to wrap up, young people in Liberia and across Africa, they have the potential to influence national and local governance, but the representation is still low, and this is because of some of the structural barriers that are already in place. I can give recommendation on that later on as we go through the discussion, but their voices often struggle for recognition, and the weight in the discussions and all that, just strengthening their representation and ensuring that their perspective are integrated into policy making processes. There has been some appointments in Liberia and other African countries, including young people. But one thing I'm very keen on is this tokenistic approach towards youth representation. Sometimes they are given the position or appointment, but just for the face value, but no actual authority is given to them, just to say there is a tokenistic approach to youth representation is also something. And I mean, we just have to keep advocating because there is strength within our numbers. Like one of the speakers said, young people have the numbers and there's strength within our numbers to mobilize the best among us for political offices, for to represent our kind and just foster intergenerational leadership across Africa.
All right, thank you very much, Alfia. So I know Joseph has been waiting for his own turn, so I'll come to you. So you're the only one running for office here. So this question, it's just very apt for you. And especially as based on your experience and working in a political party, in your opinion, is there a role for young people as leaders of political parties, like presidents, or in Nigeria we'll call them chairmen or chairpersons, given their demographic weight? One thing across the region we keep seeing is young people form the majority of the population. So is there a role for, what's your opinion on the role of these young people in leading political parties? And then secondly, in your opinion, have political parties implemented sufficient measures and arrangements to engage young people and integrate them into decision-making positions within the parties?
Okay, thank you very much, my brother. At least with my 16 years experience in political organization, I think the problem, perhaps in Ghana and the little experience in other African countries, is multidimensional. Some of my co-panelists have mentioned a few, but let me take it from another angle. We are going into an election in Ghana with about 18 million people going to vote. Out of this number, about 2/3 are the youth. So you have about over 12 million youth which are going to participate in the election. You would also realize from our election results that each year when we participate, you'll be having the youth all just a bit of the youth being divided. So in Ghana, the last election, out of the 12 million youth, the winning party had over 6 million votes. The other, the second also had about 6 million votes. So you'll see that the party keeps on dividing it. Now, let me start from another angle. We have three categories of young people that you may find participating in this election. The rural youth, who are in villages, who are in the hinterlands, and most often are with their local families, local communities. They might not necessarily be educated. They are into farming and other agrarian jobs. Then you come to the urban youth, which are also divided further into two. The uneducated, marginalized youth, they are in the urban centers, but they don't usually go to school. They are in the informal sectors, trying to find jobs and around the cities and then suburban areas. Then you have what would we call the educated youth, who are usually from the teacher training colleges, the polytechnics, the nursing training colleges, then the universities. Now, this is the issue. The political parties have managed to be able to target some of these groupings, especially at the educational level. So you go to the universities, the polytechnics, the teacher training, and they're having an internal student election, and the political parties are involved. There are two major political parties. So they start right from the schools. You go to the universities, they are electing SRC executives, and the political parties get involved, trying to control how even student leadership degenerate. So they've been trying to have them, and unfortunately, polarizing them. So you go to the university once again, you have one bunch of student leadership supporting a particular political party, and then the other supporting the same. It is interesting enough that, like one of my colleagues said from my colleague from Togo, they've managed to be able to, although they get the youth involved in their political organization, they do not give them proper political and ideological orientation. It is just they being part of the numbers and using them for their political gains or numbers, but not necessarily giving them the orientation to understand what they mean as a party, what their values, what their principles, and what their ideological perspectives are. So even when these parties are coming out with policies or programs, that does not allure to the benefit of the youth. They have, unfortunately, militant youth wings who do not support anything that they do. Now we are going to go into this election. The political parties have recruited a lot of young people who will be serving as their agents across the over 38,000 polling stations. The police have a lot of young people recruited who will be deployed across all these agencies. The Electoral Commission itself. So beside the voters, most of the active players in the political processes are young people, are the youth. But as to whether they understand their significance in the decision-making process, perhaps they don't even see the election as a decision-making process. They see it as a partisan organization that is mobilizing people to get their party in power. That is how majority of the youth are being positioned. So one belongs to party A. As to whatever party A is really saying, is committing to their policies, their programs, they neither give heed to. That is not what is important to them. What is important to them is that they belong to a political party, or they've been mobilized into a political party that is seeking for political power. They are used for so many things, not necessarily things that would benefit them. So they will support anything. The reality only dawns on them after the election, and then the party in power is not able to deliver whatever they see to do. And it's been happening for the past 30 years. It's unfortunate the youth are yet to learn from this process or from this phenomenon. They are always being used by the latest political class. They use them during the political mobilization for election, and after election, they do not really see any significant improvement in their lives. There have been, for the past decade or so, some few light-ups where you would have civil society groups or youth groups or the working class trying to mobilize against the political class. However, they haven't been much successful because they are not able to get the masses. These are, you may find hundreds or probably sometimes a few thousands who will try to go on the street and pitch on issues, pitch against the government, or pitch against development policies and programs, or even against the economic downturn in the country. But tune into your radio, you'd have a lot of young people coming in against these same people who are raising issues that concerns them, that they should be listening or they should be worried about. They will rather come from their political standpoint and be hitting on people, civil society groups who are rather raising red flags, economic red flags, political red flags, policy red flags. You will see these political parties reorienting the youth and using them to counter civil society. In recent times, there have been civil societies trying to fight issues about illegal mining in our country. Then you get the political parties turning them around to say they are only doing this advocacy because it's election time and they want the election to go in the name of the other political party. Meanwhile, there is a problem with water. There is a problem with the environment. There is a problem with food security emanating from these illegal mining activities by foreigners, by even people in politics who are using the youth to be doing illegal mining. But let the working class, the labor unions, the civil society groups begin to make advocacy and demanding responsibility from government. The political parties will mobilize these same youth to go and fight them. So I think it goes back to what my brother says. They don't even understand their role in the democratic dispensation. They don't understand their role even in the decision-making process of the country. They don't understand their role in the general governance of the state. They are just there being used by the political parties. But sometimes you may also see the political parties are trying to weaponize poverty. So a large chunk of these young people are not working. Sometimes they will promise them what we call cosmetic jobs for some few months, some few years, and then they will end it. So trying to paint a picture of creating jobs, but they are not creating any sustainable jobs. And they are using this to be able to control the young people in this country. And I think it's also across the West African sub-region. Majority of the young people are poor. They don't have skills to work. They are always looking for daily bread. So they are being taken advantage of by the political class. They are being taken advantage of by the elite class. And then here is another problem. We keep on, especially in Ghana, our political system is becoming increasingly polarized. You are either for the NDC or the MPP, who are not making any significant progress in terms of our development. But they have monetized our democratic and political system. You do not have enough money, you cannot participate in an election. So if you want to even have youth participation in an election, unless you are from a rich home, or you are from an influential home, or you at least you are able to make some level of communities leadership that the political parties then take advantage. And usually there are people who even fight their own people. They will recruit them and then use them. But we are not giving enough room from that for the other political parties to be able to come in and also to participate in the conversation. Most of these youth are being used, are being they're given an orientation where they are polarized. They don't understand what is happening in the election. Go and try to mobilize them. You need money. I mean, a constituency where there is abuse of incumbency by the ruling government, the DC, the district chief executive, is a parliamentary candidate and using resources of the state to campaign. Then I have another opponent from the major opposition party who doesn't really, if you in my personal estimation, although he's equally young, doesn't seem to understand. But because of populism by these two parties, if I need to go to anywhere, I need to make sure that I mobilize resources. Sometimes even you need to give stipends for people to come and then listen to your message. Sometimes the people, they really understand your ideological perspective on the issues that you are bringing to them. But after all the good news you brought to them, what else are you adding? Where is the money? Where is the t-shirts? Where is the food? Where is the things that others come and then share? Mobile phones that they come to share to them. So you don't have money to share, you don't have mobile phone to share, then you are not a good candidate, no matter what good policies or programs or goodwill that you bring to them. So poverty plays a critical role. Education is also playing a critical role. Majority of these young people, as I said, they are either rural folks or marginalized, uneducated urban youth who are in the numbers and are being controlled by these two political parties based on their economic status. They'll give them menial jobs, they'll give them stipends, and they will follow them. So we really have a problem. Now, you asking whether the youth are able to participate in the political organization. In my party, it's becoming increasingly problematic. Why? You try to organize them in communities, you organize them in constituencies, but they come demanding for money. They come demanding for jobs you do not have to be able to offer them. So you speak to them, they understand, they come to you in a month or two, even put them in the political organization. They leave. We've had in recent years, we've had good comrades that have been trained, young people that have been trained, leaving our party to the other party because they are looking for daily bread, because they are looking for opportunities that sometimes does not even exist. But of course, they are being promised of these opportunities. So poverty is being used as a weapon against democracy. The youth are being disoriented. They don't even understand their role and their contribution in the democratic process. And political parties that even want to stand the test has stood the test of time, like my party. The Convention People's Party was the lead party that got independence for this country. We were in office for over 15 years before the overthrow of the party. But because of monetization of our democratic process, because of, the youth has been disempowered, and rather being poverty being used as weapons against them, it has become really difficult to have a meaningful and proper youth mobilization in the political process.
Right. Thank you very much, Joseph, for the very detailed answer. Your answer just reminds me of how across the region we're facing similar challenges. You spoke about weaponization of poverty of young people, and deal with all the monetization of politics overall, and is the challenge across the region. We have many stories of that from Nigeria as well. So very soon we'll invite questions from our audience. So prepare your questions. You can even begin to ask them in the chat group. And if you have someone specifically you want to answer that, you can indicate, or I can assign them as who I think will be best suited. But before then, I'll ask all our 4 panelists one question and answers within 3 minutes at most. We have to manage time. I just want to have your opinions on how civil society organizations can support the participation of young people, political and civic participation, and how to strengthen their role in election processes. So I'll start with you, Joseph. You just finished speaking. So just no more than 3 minutes, and then we'll move to the next person. Thank you.
What I see usually, you have civil society organizations engaging themselves. Civil society organizations only come closer to the political parties during elections. But there are other few ones who are also trying and giving capacity to the political parties. So if civil society organizations would also try to come closer to the political parties, especially in the what we call in our country the smaller parties, and then help anytime you have activities. Of course, we would introduce the people that would send our young people or get closer. We could have closer collaboration, and then see how we build the understanding of the youth, the capacity of the youth, to be able to position them to partake or participate in the major political activities. See, you have some civil society groups that are advocating on specific issues like environment, like water, like gender. But as I said, they keep to themselves. Perhaps if we have the civil society engaging the communities or engaging the youth directly, they may have a better appreciation of the issues and be able to have a better understanding, so that when they are participating into the democratic process, they identify with the issues, they have an understanding of the issues, and then they'll be able to know their role and how to participate in it. I think this is very critical going forward, so that civil society don't just live among themselves, but get closer to community-based organizations, get closer to the political organizations, especially the smaller ones, and see how you can help in building their capacity.
Thank you very much for the very good submission, and especially for keeping within time. So Alfia, what are your thoughts? How can civil society play a role in increasing young people's civic and political participation, and in elections as well?
Yeah, so civil society can play a vital role in supporting political and civic participation of youth in many ways. So just to name a few, I would say education and awareness campaign for CSO to often conduct, voter education campaigns to inform young people about their rights and the electoral processes, principles of democracy. This include, disseminating information, how to register, how to vote, understand electoral process. I have seen this work many times. We've led campaigns in Liberia for the recent election, even across Africa, in other Sierra Leone and Nigeria through alumni of the Young Political Leadership School, the program that I managed. They've been able to carry out civic education and just engage with young people across like that. So also in training and capacity building as well, that is where they training comes in, where many organizations provide political leadership training, governance, elections, and leadership for young people who are actively in politics, and also for young people in civic space or civic leadership as well. So all of these, the capacity building training, also advocating for youth involvement. Civil society can also advocate for the inclusion of young people. So all of these things can help. I know the other panelists will talk more about it, but I know how passionate young people are. The demographic in Africa is a window of opportunity. If we can tap on that to just empower young people with the necessary knowledge and skills that they need to take on leadership, to get involved for political processes. And you can tell that they want to do it, but sometimes it's just the fact that they are not equipped with that knowledge to do it. So I've seen young people become so passionate. I've seen them lead campaigns and civic engagement across Liberia, across Africa in these works. Currently, there is the Liberia Emerging Political Leadership training that took me across the 15 counties of Liberia, just training young people from the grassroots to get the understanding about politics. Because if they understand what democracy means, if they understand what their vote means, if they understand electoral processing and civic education, they will be able to make informed decisions when election comes, and not just sell their vote or sell their voice for the next 6 years or for the next 4 years. So I believe civil society can play a role in that, and also mobilizing and networking, grassroots mobilization for young people as well can also help through the YPLS Africa. I'm going to give an example a lot about the YPLS Africa. I've seen 13 of our alumni who step forward to contest for political offices, and some of them student leaders across Liberia and even in Ghana and other places winning elections. So I just think civil society need to do a lot of awareness. They need to do a lot of trainings. They also need to value networking and mobilization of young people in a democracy. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move to Paul with the same question. What you think civil society can do to strengthen or to increase civic and political participation of young people in democracy and elections?
La société civile a
Thank you. Civil society has a critical role to mobilize the youth to be part of elections. First of all, civil society should understand that the youth should be classified in two categories. We have them as citizens, and then we have them as members of political parties. As a citizen, they need capacity building, they need the training, sensitization, mobilization, so they can actively be part of election processes. Now, as a citizen, the strategy you are using should be different when you are considering the youth as members of political parties. In some countries, you have many political parties, even though you may see only one or two that are dominant. And the youth are part of these political parties. Some are not very representative to win election, be it as a member of parliament or to be president. But the youths that are present there continue to be members of those parties or supporting the leaders of their party. So civil society organizations that are supposed to be neutral should really reinforce their credibility by working with the political parties. This will allow them to train the youth that is inside those political parties. We experience it in many countries, in Togo, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, and other countries. And we've noticed that when the civil society offer a platform for training for political young people, then you see that we have more participation. So many political parties are willing to send their members for them to be trained, so to make them more efficient in the electoral process. We also have another dimension. It is the observation during election. Often the youth is discouraged when they don't meet transparency, or they think that the system is not transparent. So the civil society should be able to involve the youth in observation at the local level, at the national level, and help them communicate on how elections are organized, reassure the youth, and like that, they will be encouraged to participate because they will see transparency. And talking about that mission, there is more and more you see delegates from parties that are represented in the electoral process as observers, and I think the civil society can train the youth for them to be good observers. So they have enough tool for those delegates to be able to supervise the election without complicating the process. This will reassure the youth and will help them become fully involved. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll come to you, 𝐾𝐸MA. What your thoughts are in regarding how civil society can train youth political participation. And we have about 3 minutes for that.
Okay, I think that so many civil society like YAGA in Nigeria have mobilized the youth to ensure they participate in democratic process in Nigeria, and actually got a law to remove the age limit. But I think we can go beyond that by mobilizing youths with the consciousness that you can see my fellow panelists that listed all the issues with the youths, where the same youths that the political parties mobilized to snatch ballot boxes, to beat, cause electoral violence and do so many things. But we can mobilize these energies by actually creating awareness on what the youth number can do, and what they can do, and how they can take over the space. You can see many youths that have won elections, even in Nigeria or Liberia or Ghana. They do not actually know why they are there. They found themselves there, but they are not creating spaces for others to come in because they do not have the consciousness, the power they have to make good governance possible in West African region. So I think we should start civil society group by mobilizing the youths and turning these energies for change and actually changing the consciousness that we have the power, we can make change possible, and also trying to educate them. So with the social media, with trainings, programs, with advocacy and all that, we can actually help the youth. They need help. Many of them do not even understand what is going on. And in the past, like, for example, now we are in my organization, we have a project training female students in the universities to ensure they are included in a structure of representation and decision-making in student union government. And also trying to ensure that many of them that found themselves in student union positions will also come out and participate. That is one of the strategies we want to ensure increase women participation in politics. We can do that by mobilizing all the youth from the university, telling them that this is not to be allowed to be used to destroy democratic process or democratic institutions, but actually to be used as agents of good governance and ensuring that many youths, both men and women and all other disadvantaged groups, get into positions of leadership with the consciousness that change is possible. and we are the people to make the change possible. If we continue listing our challenges, we might not go there. If we also dwell in the little successes, we won't achieve much. We have to expand the space and also create opportunities for educate the youth that they power, whether they are youth of 35 years, between 15 and 35 years or more. But every youth have to win a soul. And we can start with that now and support, like the institute, support other organizations. You don't need too much money to mobilize the youth. I can see what happened in Nigeria 2 years ago and last year. We are obedient, and everybody queuing. We are obedient. I also saw what happened. I met so many people when I participated in end to back governance. They say many of them do not even understand. They say we want end to governance. We need to educate this large crowd. We need to mobilize them. We need to turn their energies for used to, when we mobilize ourselves, we select those who will represent us in governance, those who are enlightened, those who will actually represent us. Then we have to have a kind of pool after mobilization and select both the male and female youths that are going to go into structure of representation and decision making from local government as councillors and chairpersons to the House of Assemblies. We saturate the House of Assemblies and also the National Assembly with the youth. And we also ensure that the youth become government, not this kind of youth governance we have in Nigeria currently. We have to house with consciousness to open more spaces for youth, with a consciousness that the region must work, and we have to take our place in the community of nations. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I see we have a few hands up that want to ask questions. So do we have any questions in the chat box? No, we don't. So, but let's take our three persons who have raised their hands. Please let your questions be straight to the point. We'll take all three questions first, and then we'll then have them answered. So I'll start with you, Thank God Idamoko. Let me unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hello. Good afternoon,
Yes,
everyone. My name is Idamoko. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Hello, Thank God, we can hear you. Have we lost Thank God? Okay, while waiting for him to come back, am I the only one who can't hear him?
From Nigeria, and I want to use Nigeria as a case study in this issue of youth participation in democratic processes. I would love to ask, don't you think that one of the issues or one of the bone of contentions has been party system, where, for instance, here we have two major political parties, which is the PDP and APC. Now, if you don't come out in these two political parties, it makes it so difficult for you to emerge in any position. For instance, a particular political party placing their nomination form for 22 million naira in Nigerian currency, which is very, very difficult. In this regard, how can civil society come in to make sure that this thing is being cubed in reducing the price form? Because I love one of the panelists said that political class are using the advantage that the youth don't have enough money to run an election. And you know, Nigeria and West Africa in extension, that in running a campaign, you're going to spend a lot of money. So how can civil society come in making sure that those who have interest in participating in politics are being helped to actualize this particular cause? Thank you very much. I yield the mic.
All right, thank you very much, Thank God. Samuel, let me...
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the key critical areas we have to consider is what the winner takes all syndrome that is being participated across most of the African countries. You get to understand that politics is becoming increasingly competitive because it has become such a way that when your party loses power, the rest of your youth or people who affiliate to you also lose opportunities. So anytime there's an election, all the young people who benefit from their godfathers or politicians are making sure that they make everything possible to win power. And that has become a very challenging issue that we have to check on. Secondly, it's like time to chop democracy. Once you win power and the other side of it lose power, the rest of other opportunities for the next 4 years are going to be centered on only a specific group of people. And because of that, people feel cheated, people feel being left out, people feel not being included. And that is one of the causes of post-election violence, people causing chaos because they don't want to lose power. Secondly, you get to understand that young people are being left out because we need to have something called proportional representation. In otherwise, we can call it the quota system. In Ghana, for instance, there are 3 or 2 regions in Ghana here where we have identified political parties to have their strongholds across that area. For instance, in the Volta region and then Ashanti region. If we really want to include young people across those places, we can make sure that young people are being given the opportunity to contest as MPs or coming as members of parliament coming from that area so that they'll be able to win an election and represent their people in parliament. Else, we'll keep on saying that young people are being left out. When you look at one of the key soft skills that is being spoken by World Economic Forum, it talks about leadership and social influence. Current dispensation that we find yourself, if you don't have leadership and social influence, there is no way out that you can attract the masses. Secondly, you can also have something called social intelligence. At the end of the day, or in the normal one that we always do, interpersonal relationship, if you don't have social intelligence, at the end of the day, how to even relate with delegates, how to even relate with electors, how to even engage and communicate with voters to understand that this is the clear-cut policy that you are bringing on board may be a challenging issue. So some of the things that we need to consider as some people, we need capacity, even though we have the capacity, but social intelligence is one of the key critical areas. Capturing everything, putting in one place is that, look, you can be good as whatever it is, but when you don't belong to the right political party that is well established in the system, your competency may not go anywhere. That is one of the key things that we need to talk about. Because in Ghana here, when you don't belong to party A, which is MPP, or party B, which is NDC, you can be a good material. But because people are voting based on political affiliation, not based on policy direction, and that has really divided the country into anything else. So it seems to me like politics has become an emblem of what division instead of uniting the country. And the funny aspect of it is like governance has now been limited to only party ideology instead of what is being a challenge or a problem within the community. So we need to tailor some of our policy direction based on what is in the country and what the countries need, than feeling like, okay, I'm a capitalist, I'm a Democrat, so because of that, I'm going to rule the country based on that. It might not capture the needs of the people. So therefore, I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. I was hoping for a question, but thank you for your comments and contribution as well. John?
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much to our brilliant colleagues who submitted just right now, and also to the last colleague who shared his comments. I think that's Samuel. I think he's taking some of my points, but I just wanted to quickly comment on a key important highlight during this conversation, that the youths are mostly not aware of their role in politics or in elections, or the critical role they play in our democratic dispensation. I think that is a very loaded statement, and I think that it's better, or it's important that we really interrogate that further. My brother Paul had mentioned clearly how the young people were not part of the transition early on, so most of them don't really know, and some of them are supporting populists and all that. True, these are facts. But the most important question that I think we should be asking is whether, is it that, let me rephrase it very well. Is it that the youth or young people do not understand their role, or is it that they are very disillusioned with the processes of democratic outcomes in our countries? Now, if you talk to young people across, from Liberia to Nigeria to Sierra Leone to Senegal to Mali to Niger, wherever you talk to youths in West Africa about their political participation, their engagement in politics and in governance, in democratic governance, one of the things that come out clearly is apathy. And they give reasons to the very weak, or let's say non-existent political outcomes that they get from that. So if democracy is not delivering for them, and they feel like they have an alternative, which they haven't tested anyway, let's say the alternative coming from the populist, I think that it is only naturally, rationally, I think it's only rational or let's say expedient for them to feel that the other alternative would be better. So I think it's better we really look at this particular statement quite well. In terms of what civil society should be doing, I think that our sister Alfia had really highlighted some of the key progress that has been made by civil society across, progress made by young people from across the region. We have news from Botswana, we have even news from Liberia and other places. I think it's important that some of these are very highlighted by civil society. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the challenges that the young people face without really highlighting and celebrating what progress young people have made and how that progress can really inspire other young people. I think that is a role that civil society can pick up and begin to highlight that. At Alfia's organization herself, they have marked some progress in that direction. And I think that it's something that is worth commendable. The other point is on political party engagement.
Sorry, there'll be more time for more comments later because we have to manage time. Yeah.
So just a recommendation, just one more recommendation, and that is political party engagement. Civil society need to engage political parties, not just during elections. I think we are so fixated on election cycles that we only engage political parties around youth participation only during elections. But that engagement has to start even right after elections for throughout the process itself, without just waiting until election time to really engage. So these are my few cents, and I hope that we can have more time to discuss them.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So we have actually just one question, the question by Thank God around party systems being militating against young people's participation from high nomination fees and so on. I see Alfia, your hand is up, so I'll have you answer that question and then we'll have before we move on. Alfia? Looks like her screen is frozen. Hello, Alfia. Okay, but let me have Mr. Paul also answer that question regarding young people's participation being prevented by our party systems and the way they operate. We talked about cost and so on. If Alfia can see this, okay, she's gone off. But let me have Mr. Paul answer that question.
Merci. En effet, il faut...
Thank you. We must remember that there are a number of obstacles that prevent young people from becoming political leaders, established political leaders. And among these obstacles, there is a financial aspect, and it goes without saying that the economic terrain in the country does not easily allow young people to mobilize the funding or finances they need to get into politics and compete with the established system. We must note, however, that Senegal has given a glimmer of hope, because the young man who's leading this huge African country, that's Senegal, these young people started from nowhere. They were normal civil servants who identified injustices in the governance system in their country, who took up responsibility to set up movements and clearly communicate, one, first on the problem, the dysfunctioning of the state, and then to make proposals or communicated in direct language with the Senegalese youth. These young people were supported by the Senegalese youth who mobilized themselves. And beyond the population, the young people accepted to contribute to support Diomaye Faye and Ousmane Sonko in their fight. And we saw the difference. And this is concrete. Young people paid to attend political meetings and raise funds to the party and the movement, despite the fact that the leaders of this party were imprisoned, were oppressed, despite the fact that the passive movement was dissolved. All these young people were not perturbed because they understood the foundation. They shared the same vision communicated by Ousmane Sonko, Faye, and the others. So I think this is something that should uh, uh, be of interest to us. I was in Senegal in March during the election period, and I noticed that what made the incumbent lose the election was the fact that initially they wanted to involve money. They shared more rice, sugar, did a lot more publicity, but the Diomaye Faye and Sonko camp interpreted this differently to the young people as a form of corruption, and they explained this to the young people. They didn't have posters around, they didn't have any publicity trail littered around, but they were able to speak to the conscience of young people. And this is what we need to change the tide. In ITG, we conducted a study on political parties, and we realized that out of the 16 parties that we studied in Togo since 1990, about 35 years, only 25% of these parties, that's 4 out of the 16, had changed leadership. That means that the other parties have kept the same leaders right from inception. And the young people are obliged to serve under these old people who have no new ideas, rather are only interested in criticizing the status quo. And this is a problem. This affects the courage of the young people who could have had the capacity to take up the reins of leadership in their party. So we realize this challenge sometimes with the bipartisan situation in countries such as Ghana, and is likely to be a generational crisis if the young people are not fully committed or involved. The countries, Anglophone countries like Ghana and Nigeria, so if independent candidacy is allowed, but this is what enabled Senegal to make certain strides. If it's allowed, independent candidacy and alive, we should encourage young people to establish movement, and through these movements, they would be able to counter the bipartisan system that does not make way for young people. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So Afia, I see you're back. Your hand is up, so I guess you want to take a stab at the question that Tangot asked regarding party systems being a stumbling block to young people's participation. So I could just give you two minutes because we're really running out of time. So 2 minutes to ask that question, to answer the question. Thank you.
So I love the fact that democracy encourages a multi-party system. So that is really good. I think what we need to focus on now is to advocate for the quota system. For youth quota in the multi-party system. There must be, civil society needs to advocate more for certain number of seats to be allotted for young people, which is particularly set aside to encourage growth within the party system. So that way, young people will not only be used as frontliners of violence or just to head youth wing or just maybe women wing or whatever, to make all of the noise and make sure they have the influence, because of course politics has this got this complex interplay of money, time, and people. So young people have some of the influence they are used during elections, but they don't have real authorities within the party system. So we need to advocate more. Even as we talk about multi-party system, some countries have multi-party system, but still low representation of young people. So we need, civil society will need to advocate more for the quota for young people, both in parliament and in political parties. I think that is something we need to look at.
Thank you. Comrade Ma, I see your hands up, so maybe a couple of minutes if you want to provide answer on that question. Then we'll move to the next section of this conversation.
I just want to say that the youth cannot, the youth can engage the political parties both inside and outside. They should, if, for example, we see that the parties that are likely to win elections are PDP and APC. I saw it happen last year. Then they move in mass like 𝐾𝐽𝐜 and enter and mobilize all the youth and even electoral umpire and make sure we win. As we are advocating for reduction, we made all the noises in Nigeria for political party to reduce their the cost of their intention forms. They didn't, because it's one of the strategies to close doors against the youth and women and persons with disability. We have to think outside the box by also mobilizing funds. Like when we want to raise funds for women, they will ask us, is she a candidate already? We have to make sure that youths win primary elections and become candidates. And we have to raise funds for them for campaign and also. And if political parties see that there are a lot of followers following the youth, they will give them tickets. And if also they play the politics, well, that's how we have to mobilize ourselves. I'm talking about Nigeria. It's very difficult, but we can change it. We can change the narrative by making sure we mobilize, like what the obedience are doing now. They are bringing themselves together, registering, knowing their number. And if they move into a political party, I can tell you for free that they are going to get spaces as candidates and they are going to win elections as candidates. So as we are engaging outside, the youth needs to move into those political parties. What happens is that women and the youth in Nigeria, for example, they move to all political parties that cannot win an election even at the local government level. And now we are saying youth participation, 80% of youth participated and less than 1% won. So we need to change that. We need to engage political parties more from the inside, especially those dominant political parties, more from inside. And there are many people who are ready to fund people, but they need to trust that the people they want to fund are people of character, people that are reliable, people that they can trust. So we also need to look at our character. Can people trust us? Can people invest in us? We need to work on ourselves as youths. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I think this conversation brings a nice way to us to segue into the next part, because we've spoken a lot around what civil society can do to, or how to change the party systems to increase youth participation. So I'll start this next segment with you, Joseph, as someone who is a you've been a party leader at regional level, you're a candidate in the elections on December 6th in Ghana. In your opinion, based on your experience as a candidate and as a party leader, what can parties do to better integrate young people into leadership positions? We say as party presidents, but even also as influential positions where they're able to make decisions. And how then can these young people have a meaningful role to play in shaping agendas and decision-making in parties? 5 minutes, no more than that, please, because we are now really, really pressing for time.
All right. Thank you. I think that this issue is for especially those of us who are in what we call the smaller political parties to reach out the more. The political parties need to be able to engage. I wanted to make an early advocacy on what civil society can do. We spend a lot of money in politics, foremost in Ghana, and I know it happens in most other African countries. If civil society can advocate for funding of political parties and also for budget control in the political process, perhaps it will encourage more of the parties to not only bring the youth on board, but also be able to actively engage in the democratic process. Because if things are quite expensive, or people are spending so much money in the political process, printing T-shirts, huge billboards, and other stuff, we need to start advocacy for the electoral system to control budgeting or expenditure during the elections process, because it's creating a lot of corruption. It's limiting participation, especially by young people who don't already have the means. No matter how well they build their capacity or how well intended they are in the democratic process, funding becomes an issue. Competition becomes another major problem. So for us as political parties, I have been involved in my party issues for the past 16 years at different levels. That's like I mentioned earlier, the more you want to encourage people in, the more funding becomes an issue. So perhaps the civil society organizations and the larger institutions, besides looking for funding to be able to build a capacity and to train young leaders, we should perhaps also look at how those young leaders that we train or build their capacity be able to have a better inclusion in the political process when financing, funding, and budgeting are controlled. It is very, very important. Again, if the smaller political parties could have support, budgetary support, to be able to reach out the more to young people and then be able to engage them, I think that would also be helpful. Politics and governance in Africa, in Ghana, is becoming more of an enterprise. It's a business for some people. So we even spend more money in the political process than the money we spend on our development budget. Government doesn't have money to finance education fully. Government doesn't have money to finance. But when it comes to election period, so much is spent. So one of the key things I think that should be done is advocacy on political party financing or funding that would encourage more young people to take advantage. And at the same time, control of budget expenditure during the election process, that would be very critical. But as you ask the political parties, I think we shouldn't, especially with the smaller ones, we shouldn't give up. We should still be making effort as reaching younger people, especially in non-election years, where they are having the reality check on their lives by the incompetencies, on the lack of delivery by the governments in power. We should be able to take advantage and give them better orientation, let them to understand and appreciate the process, get them involved in the policy issues, in the governance issues, in the development issues that pertains in the country and let them to have a better appreciation and know. I think if during the non-election years, we engage them where they will not demand anything from us, but rather be able to take information from us, will be able to help be part of the decision-making process when there is no election, when the politicians are taking advantage of them. We should be able to make some inroads. Civil society can be doing the capacity building, can be doing the education for the youth to appreciate governance, budget, develop issues so that they will feel they will part of it. But if we wait till election period, that would engage them. I think it doesn't really help us, because at that time, the monetization process by the political parties would have entered into it and makes it difficult to get them to really understand or appreciate what we are talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Joseph, for your contribution. And I hope there are enough, well, most of us here are civil society, I hope there are enough people in political parties too in the room that are paying attention to this point. We also hit on earlier on around electoral commissions, how they can be more effective, on whether they are effective in engaging young people as voters and candidates. But in your opinion, Paul, how do you think they can be more effective to engage young people, whether they are candidates, whether they are voters, and especially if you have specific points or action you think they should take to ensure that young people are adequately represented and involved in the electoral process?
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. The specific role of electoral commissions is important, and it's a determinant of heightened involvement of young people. What we have realized in many countries is that the recruitment of personnel to the Electoral Commission, the agents is the role of the Electoral Commission, and therefore it is important to have confidence in the youth. At all levels, they should be recruited, trained, and associated to the organization, and they should be well versed in election management. And at the Electoral Commission, at the local and the regional levels, young people should be at the helm of affairs. We should trust in the young people and recruit them as much as possible, both men and women. The speaker's line has frozen. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker. Dear participants, the speaker's line has frozen. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker.
Hello, Mark.
Hello. Yes, we're hearing that the speaker is frozen and we can't hear him. Hello, Mr. Paul. We can't hear you. Are you still with us? Well, it looks like he has dropped off. He has dropped off the offline. I think he has some connection problems. So I'll come to you, 𝐾𝐸𝐫. Are you we're just speaking generally? What do you think? Okay, I think Mr. Paul is back.
Yes, I'm back.
Well, let's have your concluding thoughts. You have like a couple of minutes before we round up the answer to this question. We are speaking around young electoral commissions trusting young people to hire them, to integrate them into their processes.
Okay, yes, thank you. Il est donc important
It is therefore important for the Electoral Commission to consider the eligibility criteria of young people in the local assemblies, but also at the National Assembly to the presidential position. In terms of the required conditions, I know that the realities are different, but we have realized that the criteria required for candidates not allow young people to apply. And therefore, it is important to consider these criteria. Then the Commission should do some advocacy for the criteria not to be an obstacle for young people. In addition to this, the required age to be a candidate must be reviewed. Some countries think 35 years is even too much because most of the military leaders, some are even less than 35 years. Most of these populists whom the young people are following are even less than 35 years. So this could be reviewed to even 25 years. And therefore, the age should be reduced to probably 21, 18, but not 35 as we see in many countries. And these efforts, if they are championed by the Electoral Commission, could further encourage young people, make them feel included. Since we do not have much time, I'll just add one or two things to conclude. There's an issue, or there was a question on the outcry of young people regarding the dissatisfaction of young people regarding democracy. Is it that they do not see the result of democratic processes or systems? What I think the young people do not understand is that democracy allows or enables public services and policy to be more efficient. If our leaders are not elected through free and transparent elections, we are likely to have incompetent leaders who are not accountable to the population, especially to young people. So elections enable us to, first of all, sort out candidates and help us to select competent candidates who would have policies that will ensure the progress of the society and young people. Democracy helps us or encourages participation. The speaker's line is breaking again.
Hello, Mr. Paul. Your line is breaking, and we can't hear you very well.
Better now?
It's slightly better, but we're also very pressed for time. So
Is it
yeah,
better?
it's better now. So perhaps you could just round up so we can.
Okay, so
it looks like we have lost him again. All right, so I'll come before I come to 𝐾𝐸MA, I'll have Afia. So it's a similar question. What we're looking at the different ways that young people could be more involved. And we had spoken earlier on around the limited representation of youth in national and local parliaments. Based on that, what practical steps do you think can be taken to enhance their influences in legislative bodies? So in other words, even for the numbers we have, how can we get them to be more impactful, more influential in decision-making in their legislatures?
Okay, I wanted also to intervene in what Paul was talking about. I think we are young people and everybody concerned. We must engage the electoral process, elections, because Ghana has a bit better electoral process than Nigeria. And Nigeria does better this time around, but when it concerns general elections, they always lead the elections. So I also suggest that young people, because when young people speak, especially when their voices are coming together, every institution and a segment and set of the society listening to them. I think we need to engage electoral umpires more to ensure that they conduct free, fair, peaceful, inclusive, credible elections. We need to talk more of electoral process, not shouting, actually engaging them every step of the way. And that they have policies to support youth inclusion in politics. What have they done with the policy? They also have for women. They have for persons with disability. We need to engage them, both civil society and the youth, engaging them for a free, fair, peaceful, credible elections. They have also, like in Nigeria, they used to have stakeholder consultations. We need to mainstream ourselves into those conversations and ensure that the youth are also, as staff of INEC, work for the youth inclusion, as national commissioners, as well, work for youth inclusion. We need to have a kind of a program that brings both the electoral umpires and also youth and civil society together to ensure that youth are given the opportunities and support the way they supported 𝐾𝐽 that went to House of Representatives in Nigeria. I think we need to have that. And also coming again to your question, and this program is very good, and I'm also sure that many people are listening to it, and they will listen to it. I think we need to do like series of this program, and we need to take it to radio program, look for money by civil society organizations to do kind of advert that everybody will take ownership of it. We need to take beyond us, even having to carry out some trainings on radio, on TV, social media space, telling this is what the youth must do, and this is how we must come together and do it. And once we start trading, every youth will be interested in it, and they will join. I think we have to take over both social media space and traditional media space, whereas we are now, like when we want to design a program for year 2025, we have to have a component of it that speaks directly to the youth involvement in democratic process. So if we decide to create social media platform and also traditional media like radio programs, we need to be intentional and conscious about it. All of us, if we are all saying the youth must be included in decision-making and structure of representation, everybody will start singing it. And if there was a time in Nigeria, because we were always talking about women involvement in politics, so people will bring their wives and relations. It's okay, we can start from there. And there were so many women in politics. When we got tired and stopped talking, or when donors changed to other issues, and now we went back, and the spaces we won, we lost them. So we need to consistently, concertedly build the youth involvement in democratic process in all the activities we are doing, and take over the media space, both social and traditional. It will yield a great result, because people want to identify with things that are trending, especially the youths, and they will come together and they will also engage both political parties, electoral umpires, and all the commissioners, and ensure that the youths are given space. But we have to prepare the youths that when they get there, they have to change the narrative and give us a society and a region we have been hearing for over the years. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade. So yes, Alfia, Comrade already asked the question I was going to ask her in terms of what democratic institutions can do to, to ensure young people to better address the needs and concerns of young people, particularly around trust. And you hit the nail on the head regarding free and fair elections are very, very important. But coming to you, Alfia, the question I was asking earlier on is in terms of how can we make the voices of young people in parliaments be more influential? How can we make it carry more weight in decision-making processes? Considering the fact that already we're dealing with a limited representation, but how can we make even the limited numbers currently make it count more? Alfia?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for the question. For the sake of time, as I was just thinking about some of the strategies that we can use, to just look at youth representation initiatives. And under that, two things, I spoke about one earlier, the youth quotas, to implement quotas for youth candidates to ensure their representation in legislative bodies, right? And also youth councils as well. So quite recently, there was a town hall meeting held in Liberia where the president wanted to speak with young people for the first time in many years after me. We all gathered, and one of the things that I recommended was to establish a youth advisory council, body of young people representing diverse sectors to just be able to advise the president and put forward young people's opinion. And surprisingly, the president actually embraced that. And instead of Liberia having a youth advisor, there has been an advisory panel set up of 5 young youth leaders, and that is very progressive. Now, with such opportunities like the youth council, youth quotas, which is very important, there must be quota system, especially in the House of Representatives or even in Parliament, to just encourage more young people to be able to speak on issues that will affect other young people as well, or are affecting young people. And also to take into consideration the issue of accountability and transparency. Most times, young people, to some extent, we understand what democracy means, but the frustration comes in when we take the pathway towards democracy, which is voting, and we don't get the result of democracy if it doesn't deliver to us. Like corruption, accountability issue, it frustrates young people a lot. It's like, why am I even voting when I'm not getting the result from it? So all of those things can, hinder young people as well. So also to encourage internship and fellowship programs, legislative fellowship program or legislative internship program to get young people in the House of Legislature or to just understand the system, how is it working. We have implemented that in Liberia. We have some of our fellows at the House who were actually interning to just get first-hand information and be prepared as well. Because some of the reasons why young people, if few of them are in Parliament, one of the reasons why they are quiet is because of the lack of experience. In as much as I advocate for youth inclusion and youth development, I'm very keen on capacity building for young people, because if we push young people forward, they must be able to stand up to the task, to deliver on it, to say, yes, I am prepared. And how can we adequately do that is to be able to build that capacity. So also, I've seen many young people in parliament are relatively quiet, and sometimes it's just the fact that they're not quite prepared. Maybe they just got there by some influence or godfather or whatever, but then to just prepare them that when they get there, they can be able to advocate for the issues that matters most to young people. So pave the way for other young people to come on. So these and many more strategies can help to improve the advocacy or the voices of young people in parliament.
All right, thank you very much for that contribution, Alfia. So we're going to open the floor for very quick comments, and I'm going to shorten the time now to a minute. But earlier on, I had missed out on asking a question from Eric Pago, who said, what advocacy can your organizations here do in our states so that a quota and support are reserved for young people in electoral lists and during the process? As a young person in past elections here, even though Eric, I don't know where here is, my party has made the effort to position ourselves at the forefront, but we still need technical and financial support from CSOs and the outside world. So, we have had a couple of the panelists speak around quotas and how to support young people. But in terms of what kind of advocacy do you think can be done in that regard for quotas and different political systems and different legal systems across the region. But we'll come to, so maybe I'll ask you, Alfia, since you just made mention of quotas, what advocacy do you think can be done in that regard? Okay, Eric is from Togo. Thank you very much, Eric. I don't know if Paul is back, because I also like him to take a stab at the question, especially considering the fact that his work is in Togo.
Yes, I'm back.
So perhaps you also can take a stab at that question. What advocacy can be done regarding quotas and reserve lists for young people, and then providing them with parties with technical and financial support?
Ok, merci. C'est une question pertinente.
Thank you. This is a very important question. The advocacy need to be done at various levels. First, with the political parties. The political parties should understand the added value of the commitment of the youth within their parties, and also the capability of the parties to win election through the involvement of the youth. In Togo, for example, we work to have an electoral reform that will integrate a parity rule or a quota for the women. Normally, the list should be 50%, 50%. But the rule has not been applied in the legislative election of April 2024. The majority of the parties, the opposition parties, think that they will not have qualified women to have a list that are 50-50. We got meetings to train in Togo, but unfortunately, we have been disappointed by the fact that the law exists. This law has been initiated by the political authorities and the government. And unfortunately, the law has not been applied. And currently, there are less than 20% women are less than 20% at the parliament. They are 18%. So if we are having a law and the political parties are not convinced that the youth can really help, it will not work. So we may have the quota, it may not work. The level of advocacy is with the political authorities. Once that the political parties are convinced, we should use them for advocacy towards the parliament and towards the government, so as to have a quota that will ask youth to get involved. And I also spoke about the minimum age to be candidate. That age should be brought down with the new technologies of information and communication. It's easier to build the capacity of the youth, and it can be done massively. So we should use that lever so that from 18 years old, the youth can start becoming candidates at the district level, at the regional level, before they target the assembly, the National Assembly, and why not at the presidential level. So gradually, the last aspect is to work on self-confidence of the youth. They are not self-confident. They don't really understand why they should participate. They don't understand why we should be politically committed. So we need to train them so they can be those carrying that advocacy work. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So, Eric, I see your hands are still up. So I'll give you the mic for a minute to ask your question. And then Samuel, you too. If it's a contribution as well, just keep it to a minute max because we are really pressed for time. And we are past the finish point where we shall run it up this webinar. Thank you very much. Eric, is he still there? Eric, I see your hands are up, so you can speak.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
I thank you for the intervention and especially Paul's submission on the quota and the representation of young people. But I have a plea. I'd like to know if you could we could develop further this issue of a quota for us in Togo. We'll be glad. And we'll be glad if we could have more of such events and also in person in Ghana, in Togo, Nigeria. We, the young people, would be glad to take part. And since countries such as Senegal and Ghana have made strides, we could also learn a lot from that. That's my plea. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Eric, for that. I'm sure the organizers and other partners in the room also will look into that regarding having more of this and happening face to face as well. Samuel, I'll give you the mic for a minute to make your contribution, ask a question. So please, let's stay within time so we can begin to round up.
Okay, thank you very much. If we look at the National Youth Policy of Ghana, during the validation period, most of the concern that was raised was about constitutional amendment. You get to understand that in Ghana, if you are not 21 years, you can't contest as a member before you contest for presidency, unless you are a 40-year person. So these are some of the impediments that young people face as people. Elsewhere, people are 35, people are even below 35, and they are prime ministers. If we look at the case of Julius Malema, the likes of Nelson Chimbase of Zimbabwe, the likes of Bobi Wine, they started from somewhere. And my second comment is what? It is upon time that leaders understand the DEL framework. The DEL framework simply talks about the diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is the only way it will help to reduce apathy. And the last point has to do with what? We keep on talking about experience. How will young people get the experience to be in parliament? We must start at the local government level. That is where leadership to the grassroots. When you are able to start from the grassroots, where the least government official at the local level is the unit committee member. When you start to contest from that level, before you become assemblyman up to the top hierarchy, I believe building yourself from that level will be able to make you a potential candidate contesting in the mainstream elections. So people must put these three critical areas into consideration before their voice can be heard. Because no one can be able to succeed using ignorance. We need to build our capacities. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Samuel. So at this point, I'll have the speakers give their final comments within a minute as well. So 𝐾𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐢𝐜, I'll have you give your final comments. Keep it within a minute.
Okay, my final comment is that we have a lot of young people that will give us the vision we have been praying for. And we need to engage the young people. We need to help them to open the political spaces. And we have to organize and build capacities, encourage them. I'm talking with a civil society group. We have to intentionally, consciously design programs that will help take over the social and traditional media and cause the young people participating in democratic process a trading issue, a topical issue that all of them want to be part of it. We should engage political parties both from inside and outside to ensure that the young people saturate the political parties and decide who gets what. And most importantly, we have to be conscious and intentional about engaging the electoral umpires, especially in Nigeria, to make sure that they organize free, fair, peaceful, inclusive, credible elections, which a single act will mobilize young people on its own. We have to be intentional about it. And we need the young people to take over because the future belongs to them. And they have the energy and capacity and capability to make change possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Paul, final comments within a minute.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. In the beginning, I talked about three major crises that affect the participation of young people, political identity, representation, as well as the sovereignty crisis. The two crises, identity and sovereignty, recognition of sovereignty, are related directly to young people and their capacities through trainings, culture, political knowledge. And therefore, to resolve this problem, we need to build aggressively the capacity of young people and remove all obstacles, especially the linguistic obstacles. The training and information must be accessible to young people in the languages they understand. The third crisis, which is a crisis of representation, has to do with the political environment within which the young people find themselves. We need to carry out more advocacy, and why not build capacity of the political status quo that would have to work with young people at all levels. We need to train political leaders to understand the place of the youth and to provide them with spaces to express themselves and also to engage in generational dialogue with young people for there to be a paradigm shift. Finally, all organizations such as WACSI, that are regional organizations, must work with national organizations or agencies for young people and CSOs that are into governance, and they have to work together to find requisite trainings, relevant trainings for young people. And today, it is impossible. It is very possible with technology to build capacity of young people and to engage in continuous learning. We should work in order to have a new generation of citizens in the country that would be more sensitive to political issues, who understand the stakes, and who would be committed through their actions to change the political landscape and to make democracy more dynamic, more palpable, and to the general good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Alfia, your final comment within a minute.
Yes, I'm here. It's been a great time contributing and also learning as well from experienced panelists, I must admit. Thank you for this dialogue. But like I started and stated that while we are waiting, what capacity are we building? What internship, what opportunities, what education are we getting? Because once we advocate a lot, we expect to see change and we are hopeful. But when the change that we hope to see come, are we prepared to take on leadership? So this is just my advice to every young person out there to define your waiting period. I tell people I am waiting now, but I am not wasting. So our waiting period cannot literally be wasting period for us. It is time for us to just be prepared for what we hope for. And I mean, just go forward and hope that we can all work together to accomplish a lot. I spoke to a friend of mine last week and he was like, Althea, are you going to contest sometime in future in Liberia? I said, of course I will. He said the influence is building. A lot of young people trust you. I'm like, not now, but I will. And then interestingly, I thought of the seat I would love to contest for. And by that time, I'm thinking if I'll even be the age. And then I told him, I said, I don't think I'll be 30 by then. He said, Alfia, we have to change the law. We'll have to look at it because I mean 30, if you are not 30, something must be done now. So it just reminded me of the age limit, that we have to work on a lot of structural change within the political system that will need to be worked on for young people to be incorporated. So it's been a great time having this conversation. I look forward to more engagement with other youth organizations, youth leaders, and just leaders as a whole to just prepare us for what we hope for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I particularly love the line, your waiting time should not be a wasting time. We should have the
Exactly.
Let me Joseph for your final comments.
All right. Thank you. I think this has been quite informative and educative platform. I would particularly want to see more of this as a post, especially in Ghana, post-election conversation. The issues that we raised, for now, some of them might be too late to even correct them, but we have more years ahead. So one, I think the inter-country dialogue, people from different backgrounds or countries dialogue has been quite helpful. We are all learning. We need to be able to expand this conversation in the nearest future. Sometimes maybe have a more direct presentations and an engagement, record them, be playing them over and over. WACSI is doing quite well. I participated in your last program here in Ghana and also on this platform. We need to get civil society to move outside their confines, their domains, and engage, create constituencies with our universities, with our schools, with our youth groups, community-based groups, and then let's see how we can get these conversations outside our peripherals to outside our domain to the larger youth population, for them to appreciate Ghanaians sharing knowledge with Liberians, Liberians sharing knowledge with the Nigerians, and vice versa. The conversation in Africa, in West Africa, in Africa as a whole, needs to continue to change the mindset of our people, to be able to get them to appreciate that we need to take ownership of our democratic and governance process and ensure that we build leaders in our communities, among our youth, and then be able to nurture them to be able to take national leadership. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to all our panelists for your very brilliant submissions throughout this conversation and all our guests. Apologies that this has run over time. We should have finished 30 minutes ago. But this has been a very, very rich conversation talking about how we could get, talking about youth participation in democratic processes in West African region. The beautiful thing is that we didn't just dwell on the problems, but also advocated solutions and cutting across from electoral commissions to political parties to the legislature in terms of building youth influence, to the overall democratic institution and building their trust in the democratic process. And I feel we're all living here with our work cut out for us. It doesn't just highlight the scale of the challenge, but also giving us ideas on what we can all do in our own small corners to advance the cause of youth participation in our countries and which will cumulatively across the region. And this kind of fora are very, very important because this cross-sharing, this kind of reminded when people say Africa is a country, and this case, West Africa is a country, it's a reminder of how similar, how we're different and yet so alike in terms of the challenges that we face. And so I hope that from here going forward, we all put to use the insights we have had here, the networks we have built, to see what we can do in our own ways to increase youth participation in political processes, not just elections. Elections are very, very important, but they're just only one aspect of the democratic process. Being between elections is where a lot of democracy still occurs in that period. So thank you once again for joining the conversation and for being a part, for your contributions, your submissions, your questions, and your presence. So I'll yield the mic back to Joyce and to run us up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Althea. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you, Paul, as well. And then thank you, Comrade Maodi, so much for making time with us today. And the rest of you who also joined to listen in, thank you so much. Thank you for your submissions. If you look at the chat room, there's a link to a survey there for our English speakers. The first link, kindly click on it and fill it out for us before you leave. It should not take long at all, a minute max. And then for our Francophone speakers, if you can click on the second link as well, and then fill it for us quickly before you leave the meeting. Thank you so much, everyone. And hoping to see your responses from the link.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci beaucoup, au revoir.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, WACSI.
Merci à tous et au revoir.